Hello and welcome to Module 3. Today we will be discussing how to write your policy analysis paper. This is a very important module in this course, and I strongly recommend that you refer back to it numerous times during the course of the semester to make sure that you have the directions and such exactly as you wish for them to be. So in writing the policy analysis paper and providing clear instructions, I've tried to give you various resources that I think will be useful to you. I'm going to go over some of those resources. I strongly recommend that you do not take a shortcut on this chapter. There's going to be a temptation. You're going to say, oh, I have very little to do in terms of graded assignments here. That's going to ultimately result in you completing a policy paper that's going to reflect a quarter of your grade. So there is no substitute for trying to understand what's in here. And if you don't at first understand, that is completely fine. I'm here as a resource to you. Now, one thing that I have done is I've completed a voiceover PowerPoint presentation called Elements of a Good Policy Paper that you'll see. I encourage you to read these. Now, one of the things that I'm going to try to get across numerous times this semester is that whenever you write a paper for a course, in some respects you are writing a essay examination for that course. Yes, you do have to bring in outside material, but an instructor is going to be looking for evidence that you've learned in the course how to carry out a certain task or assignment. So as you're writing, look at these other modules that we're going to be covering and try to bring in course material and utilize it effectively. Now, you can use these as sources in your paper. After all, if you have a if you have a article that you read in this course and you say, haha, this is exactly what I was trying to say, or this is exactly how I want to organize my paper, then clearly that is something you should do. But you should also ask yourself if at the end of a course that involved you reading a book by Bardock, if you read a book by Stone, if you read several articles that were assigned to you, if you had several weeks where there were PowerPoints and video discussions that gave you directions, and there was nothing in any of that that helped you write a policy paper, well, then that becomes a failure either on your part or on mine. And your unfortunate situation is that I feel pretty comfortable in the assignments that we have for this course. So I feel like I feel like you should be trying to utilize some of the key ideas. Maybe not all of them, but at least some of them. Another thing that I'm going to try to get across is that people learn in different ways. Now, it's in my nature to write paragraph-long descriptions of how you're supposed to do something. So if as you're looking at the directions for the policy analysis paper or for the directions on how to select a topic or directions on how to do the policy question assignment, then and you're not the kind of person who gathers a lot from papers written in paragraph form, there's no crime in converting this to a series of bullet points. Read a sentence, say, is this a sentence that's asking me to do something? And if it is, set that out as a bullet point. Say, is this something that I'm supposed to make sure that I've done? And this, and this, and this. When it says 12-point or 11-point Arial font, will I just remember that? Or maybe I should make a particular note of that. Anyway, I strongly encourage you to dialogue with the directions so that you understand exactly what you're trying to do as you write this paper. The next thing I would say is look at the rubric. I used to tell students, I say, just decide the grade you want and write the paper like that. Maybe that's a little flippant, but I think that if you look at the rubric and you see what I'm looking for, then when you go back over the paper when you're finished, you say, well, between the directions and the rubric, did I address the things that that Carl wanted me to do in order to write a good paper in this course? The next thing that you're going to want to look at is there is actually a checklist. Print off that checklist, and you should compare your final paper when you've finally finished it with the checklist and say, is this what have I written a paper where I could check all of these boxes? I don't actually make little check boxes. I just number them, but you could circle them or cross them out or whatever it is you want to do. Print them all on their own page and tear them up bitterly if that's what helps you write a paper that you can be proud of. And then I have a note on source quality is what I call it. It's a page long or a couple page long discussion on when you have good sources versus when you have bad sources. I adopted it originally for a research design course, so if you look at it, there'll be some things where you say, well, maybe this looks a little bit like something I would look for in research methodology. But there are clear things that can be appropriated, and definitely one of the things that I advocate is that you look less for a single balanced source than you look for numerous sources that provide different perspectives. One of the important aspects of critical thinking is that you're able to look at several different sources and synthesize your own beliefs from them. And I think that a mistake that a lot of people make is that they hear one side of the story, it sounds consistent with what they believe, and they don't really interrogate it. In an ideal world, especially a policy analyst, would immediately try to be skeptical of anything of which they agree, and would try to be respectful and even deferential to anything that they disagree with, and then they can take those together. If you read what you believe in its worst light, and you read what you don't believe in its best light, it should help you update your current beliefs. Probably won't cause you to change your mind. And then finally, we have a section on selecting your topic. And I would say that not all topics are created equally, right? The best topics are ones that you can completely cover in 10 to 12 pages. If you start with a topic and then you have to narrow it down, that's understandable. If you start with a topic and you have to broaden it, I guess that's understandable. I don't believe that it should ever be necessary. I've mentioned in the past that I believe that something as narrow as a leaf removal at Zoo Atlanta could be a policy proposal of 10 to 12 pages. And that the nice part about it is that you would come much closer to completely addressing the issue than you would if you were trying to deal with global warming, right? If you say, I want to fight climate change, and if you come up with a 10 to 12 page climate change proposal, well, you might impress Greta Thunberg. Separately, we have a set of directions and rubric for the policy question assignment. The thing that you should keep in mind is that you are required to gain approval for this assignment. If you just write a paper and if you don't have an approved topic, you won't be able to complete the final paper. I'm pretty deferential to students on topic selection, but if it's something that is outside the area of policy analysis, for instance, we're not constitutional law, we're not a constitutional law class. So if it's going to come completely down to whether the Supreme Court says it's okay, that's not the paper you're going to be allowed to write. If it's something you can't cover in 10 to 12 pages, then I'm going to ask you to narrow it down. If it's something that is entirely implausible, you're going to land on the planet Jupiter, notwithstanding the fact that it is a gaseous planet. I'm going to say no. If it's, I'm going to build a time machine, I'm going to say no. This is not a speculative or an imaginative class. This is a class where you're going to address a real-world problem with technologically and politically feasible solutions. And that's not such bad as you would imagine, because after all, one of the great challenges, one of the amazing and fun things to do in a course like this is to develop policies that are likely to be implemented if you make a good enough argument. And so good luck with that. Also, if it's something that's patently unconstitutional, if you say, well, first thing we're going to do is we're going to arrest all of the Democrats and make them live in Hawaii, then I'll say, yeah, you can't do that. For some really bizarre reason, some Democrats prefer to live in places like Ohio when they could instead live in Hawaii. All right, so when I start to find humor in my own comments, I think that's probably the time to wrap things up. If you have any questions, if you say, is this policy good enough? You don't have to wait till you've actually written something up. Just go ahead and send me a message. But if you just have an idea for paper, send me an email and maybe we can get you started on the research, but it won't get you out of your meeting. So good luck, and I'll talk to you again next week.